Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Matthew and today we're doing another figure comparison. Today we're doing a figure comparison based on the NECA Godzilla 2014 original, well one of the, at least the earlier iterations, versus one of the more later reiterations. Now, I want to make it clear that yes, I did compare these mildly in the review to this guy. However, I didn't really do much of a good job analyzing the two figures, so I thought I'd go ahead and throw these two in a video together. And, well, here we are. So, I need to make everyone aware that I cannot exactly pinpoint which iterations of these figures are from which production run. Because, let's be honest, NECA is very, very selective over, like, how they do their figures and what they actually, like, will reissue. Because it's abundantly clear that even if the figure has the same mold, it won't come out the same. Like, say, for example, if a figure comes in from 2018, they make, and then they decide to reissue in 2022, that won't be the same figure necessarily. It'll still be branded the same figure, but it won't be the same figure, if you understand what I'm saying. That applies to the 2014 NECA, where before they lost the license, they reissued pretty much all of them in their poster box packaging and gave them a bit more of, like, a bit of more oomph with the paint. And that's basically what we're going to be talking about here. I originally had bought this one in the summer of the winter of 2016. Uh, and I bought this one from a lot not too long ago, and I don't exactly know when this was originally purchased, but it seems to be a much more later release, judging from the way it's painted. So let's go ahead and analyze these two figures. Starting off with the sculpt and paint of both figures, I think it's abundantly clear that the original, which this one was my original from 2016, it's abundantly clear that this one is still rather holds up. It's got a nice like base black paint job and has some kind of like orange blue hues in the mix of the plastic, which looks really good. Kind of has a much more duller, kind of almost olive yellow eye paint scheme with a very dry or kind of mellow looking black iris. And especially like with the teeth, they are painted but just not as like thoroughly. Maybe over the years I scuffed the teeth and I'm just like being a total goofball about it. But for what the paint is left there, it's certainly not the best white compared to this one. But as for the tongue, it is definitely like really purple, and I really like how it's painted. And the gums just kind of like blend all together. It's mostly the same color, even though it's not like that's obviously darker than this. The gums on the top are, but it looks mainly consistent, which I do like the consistency. The reissue version has a brighter, like like kind of eyeball itself. It has the eyes a bit more painted, a more thicker black. I think this is what I meant to say. That looks more like a thinner shade of paint than this one does. The blue looks a little consistent with the head on this one compared to this one. A little bit more of a wash this go around, and the mouth is obviously done a lot better. I'm gonna be honest, because we actually had the membrane, even though it's not necessarily like it's done on the monster, it's where it's part of the joint. It's actually painted a different color versus on the original. It's kind of faded into the gums, and you can honestly can't really tell it's there. But on the reissue, you can tell it's perfectly there. And on the reissue, the painted teeth are done a lot better, and even like the tongue, it just clashes a lot better than this one does. Even though the gums, I will say again, painted rather identically, it's just done a lot better on the reissue. And going even down to the neck pieces here, the neck on the front has a decent like brown olive yellow wash, and it does look the part. It gets the job done, and it looks really good. And even comes back down here with the more like blue wash that you get on the top, and then like the black fins, and it does look rather swell. versus the reissue on the NECA 2014, where they have a bit more of a blue wash. Like it's more of a blue wash rather than in the plastic, and it just pops a lot more. The only downside I'll say is that the original has a more defined neck color scheme, but the gills on these ones are just a lot better painted and actually look, you know, at least somewhat better. And they're more highlighted, like where the gills actually meet, versus this one where it relies more on the sculpt. And you might also notice that this one's a little less glossy. It still has gloss, but it's a lot less glossy than the original one is. And I think that's honestly like a take it or leave it kind of stance. Moving on down to the torsos of each figure, I think it's abundantly clear that the reissue just, well, actually let's put a little bit of a cap on this one. The original has again more of that like blue wash that's seeping on the shoulders and the arms, and has pretty glossy nails, like a pretty good finish, almost like they actually used nail polish on this guy. Wouldn't be the first time I've done it. But what really I want to pay more attention is at the chest. The chest is done in a very kind of like dry brushy way, and it honestly looks more like a wash than just blatantly putting it on there. And while I do like the look of it, over the years it just kind of reminds me just how like little paint there is really, because you can definitely see that this is definitely like a dry brush across the chest. It's not done bad at all, but then you get to here where they do feature like more of that dry brushing and the wash on this guy, like more of that paint scheme, but they also carry it through the chest and it just looks a lot better. Like this looks like a Godzilla who got down and dirty versus this one who got more like in the ocean, and maybe that's what you can chalk it down to. But really, this is just done so much better uh, than this is, and it even kind of bleeds down to the legs and bit of the shoulder here. I mean, you kind of see it when you move the shoulder joint. They didn't paint like get through, but again, it still looks fine, even like down here a little bit. But again, I think it's honestly fine with the way they did it. And speaking of the legs, you can definitely see that again. What I was talking about is just like the leg wash is on here like a lot dirtier on the sides, like interior, versus here where there's basically none of that. Like not even that carries through. I mean, there's some of it that kind of carries through, but not a lot of it. And you can definitely see like one of them is just a lot more glossier than the other, and it almost looks again like this one came out of water, this one got down and dirty in the city. However, what I think both figures don't really do all that well is the dorsal plates. I know I've always praised them, but over the years I kind of realized how soft these dorsal plates are in comparison to the others. Don't get me wrong, they're still spiky, but I really feel like with the reissue, this could have been like a perfect chance to like recast it and do like a bit bigger and like more spikier plates, but it ends up coming across as a little bit like soft and cheap. I know it's a $20 figure, but like hot dog. And last but not least, the tail. And I've already covered it in the review, but the dry brushing on the tail is actually done pretty disappointingly on the new one, because like it just kind of stops and it doesn't even carry throughout here. Well, it's hard to see on the original, but there is somewhat of a wash that kind of carries throughout the whole entirety of the bottom of the tail, which I do like. And really, that's the only difference aside from like, yeah, that's basically the only difference aside from like the color of it all. So to summarize the sculpt and paint, it's pretty much, well, the same sculpt. Whoa, what a voice crack. It's the same sculpt, like the base mold. However, they have different paint jobs. And I will say that the reissue is definitely executed a lot better than the original, but I'll give the original the benefit of the doubt that it may have aged, and, I've had this thing for like over 8 years incoming on 9 now. So actually, I think, yeah, like around 9 years or so. So I mean, chances are maybe this thing isn't up to its pristine condition. It's been through a lot. I took it outside, took it to camps, took photos with it outside and inside, and did all this crazy stuff with it. So it's probably been worn down a little bit throughout all the years, but still in rather pristine shape. But this just shows like how much better, like as far as like the paint goes on the newer versions compared to the older versions. However, something I didn't really mention, or actually didn't mention this in the original review of the reissue, but I never really bothered to show on camera, was the way that the necks are molded. See, the original, and pretty much almost every other version, has like a rounded kind of cut. So it's all fluid, so you can kind of rotate and kind of see like a basic curve in where it would be cut. That is where the articulation is, and just a bit of a spoiler for it. However, here, there's a bit of it like two divots. Like they kind of go inward and then they go outward where the neck meets the cut. So, uh, the only one I've ever seen it is on this particular copy. And I've looked up and seen like tons of other versions. But I've not been able to find like another one of these that has like the cut in the neck like this. So maybe this is just exclusive to mine, or maybe it was exclusive to that one batch in a total of 6 years producing this figure, but who knows at this point. Also, something I will say that the original does better than the reissue is that it hides the mold lines really well. Here, there's absolutely no mold line. If there is, it's really tucked in, versus here, where it's pretty much painfully obvious. Like, the paint's cool, but the mold line, like, once you get it, kind of get it to you, it really just, it's an eyesore. And that's also not the only place. Here on the original, there is somewhat of a semblance of a mold line here. However, it's not as noticeable as this one is, because you can clearly see that sucker running straight through the entirety of the leg joint. So to pretty much round out the whole section, the original has the overall better mold as far as like the quality of it, and like lacking all the mold lines, and it's held up over the years. But as far as like the quality of the paint itself goes, I gotta give it to the reissue here. Next, we're gonna go over to articulation, and I have to say again, the articulation is the exact same across both figures. There is not one single change across either of them, with the exception of one modification. So let's go over it. The original has, well, both of them have a ball joint here at the base of the head, so you can move pretty much a fair amount here. Can't go up all that far, can't go down, but you can get some good side to side and kind of rotate and hinge at the jaw, and ball joints here at the neck, which you can pretty much do any kind of pose you want. The reissue, again, has the same type of thing going on. Hinge at the jaw, ball joints at the head and neck. But here's the modification. You might notice that there's a dorsal plate missing between this one and this one. That is because I believe that the resell, or the one who sold me this, actually took it and migrated that and kind of like cut in the joint, so this Godzilla can look up more than the original one could, as you can kind of see. So I believe that's what they did. So going back to the original here, we have ball joints here at the arms, so you can move pretty much a fair amount here. Lots of good movement. Go up, down, side to side, all that fancy stuff. You can hinge at the elbows, and pretty much they have a swivel at the elbows as well. Ball joint wrists, so you can kind of go up and down, side to side, all that good stuff. Ball joint here at the ab crunch, you can get a little bit of a crunch, not too much, but you can kind of get some good side to side and a really good tilt, and you can really swivel those boys really well. Here's the leg joints, and over the years these things have gotten looser and looser, but they still function the way they should. Essentially, they work like they have a barbell style joint. Instead of like a joint that's just kind of basic, they almost behave like free floating pieces, to where you can actually rearrange it and realign it with the sculpt. So if you want like Godzilla's kicking up, like if you try to do that on the base figure, you're going to end up like this. However, if you use that barbell joint, you can actually like sync it up and it'll look seamless. Even though there's a seam like there, it won't break the sculpt if you're wanting like that, and you can kind of come back round, use that barbell, and you can kind of come in and out and you can just kind of mess with that joint for all it's worth. Hinges at the knees and swivels at the knees. Ball joint here at the foot. And 1, 2, 3, 4 ball joints of tail. And from here to roughly here is pure bendy wire. And then here is like full rubber. So again, that's pretty much the whole base articulation as far as both figures are concerned. Nothing is like outright changed. You think they'd put some swivel hinges in this guy, but shockingly no. And for a bit of a comparison, since I don't think there's really any need to figure out how big this guy is, because, well, specifically these figures, because, again, these are like 10 years old, and I'm pretty sure that everyone knows how big these things are, especially with the amount of times I reviewed them. We're going to be doing a bit of a more detailed comparison as far as, like, how they compare with their legendary counterparts. With adjusting my camera here, there we go. The NECA V1 and NECA V2 2019 from King of the Monsters. No, I'm not doing V3 because that's not what I'm trying to go after. I'm trying to go after the basic appeal for what I feel like works better with your Godzilla and NECA figures. That being said, because there's variation with the two, we can actually come to a decent conclusion as to which one I think is personally the one better fit to be part of the collection. Even though I think both of them do their job fine because they're the exact same figure, just with different paint apps. So let's just talk about this. I think the NECA KOTM figures are renowned for being some of the most colorful Godzilla figures, not just in KOTM, but in history, as far as like sheer color goes. Because you got this one that's like an olive green, almost what he has, except just jacked up. He is renowned for having so much blues on his body and like blacks and dark shades. And then you have V3, which is like pretty much all the warm colors, pretty much artist's warm colored fans dream come true. Which upon both accounts, I honestly have to say, because it has the superior paint job and the execution of said paint job, again, I'll give this one the benefit of the doubt, just worn out over the years, this one works better with these two. Now, that's not to say that this one is horrible. I think that they all look great together. But it's just, if you want the quality of the sculpt, of the paint specifically, this one would work better than this one would with these two. And so, what's basically the rundown of this? Well, these are two extremely similar figures because they're literally the exact same. I mean, they're both the NECA 2014 with some differences in the paint apps. That's basically the main primary difference. And honestly, I think that you should just buy either or. Because while there is a significant paint difference, I think because of how basically the same these two are, there's really not much to really say one's definitively better than the other. Sure, one has a better paint job than the other, but I would go ahead and say that as far as the range is talkative, this one is better than this one. So maybe that's a bit of a plus in your book. So again, honestly, there's really no winner because the winner is up to you. But that's essentially like a bit of a rundown as far as like what the overall differences are to each other. Same mold, same pretty much everything, except for the paint. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys liked it, definitely subscribe to the channel. Believe in Jesus, accept Him as Lord and Savior today. Spread the gospel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace everyone. God bless.